Hey y'all, still on location, but here ready to tell you which players you should be worried about in fantasy and who is just ready to drop. Forget name value, look at the numbers, look at the bottom line. Get rid of these guys before the stretch run. Let's start first and foremost with a guy who's been in the news for all the wrong reasons in a team that, well, same situation. It's Chicago White Sox, Tim Anderson. Now let's start with the obvious that you might just want to drop Anderson out of shame at this point if you have him, because he got laid out and could barely keep himself standing after Jose Ramirez had his way with him. Anderson's stat line basically is just proving what we already know, that he is done. Now maybe he's not done for good, but there's an excellent article on Fangraphs just the other day outlining how really Anderson has been a byproduct. I mean, look, I hate to say luck. You can't be lucky for multiple years on end and have a great batting average and power speed. He's been a fantasy stud really for the most part. But man, that batting average, a lot of it was predicated on batted ball luck, and he just did not get that to go his way this year. And the batting average right now on the season is 242. Just in August alone, barely hitting 200. So there goes one of the biggest parts of his game. The other is speed. That is not there either. He's barely stealing bases, 11 on the season. And then here's the worst part, though, not that he's a power hitter, but one home run on the entire season. One home run. This is one of those things, if you do like a blind resume and look just at the stat line, you'd say this guy is borderline worth being shipped back to the minors if you thought he was a rookie. Well, he's not. He's a former all-star, but somebody who is just not doing anything to help your team. There's nothing he's doing that a replacement on the waiver wire couldn't do better. All right, next up we have to get to the Mets. And look, for this one, I'll just straight up say I'm gonna take the L on both my call of the Mets possibly winning the World Series this year, and then also Starling Marte being a second half turnaround. He's turning just like the Mets themselves in the opposite direction, going straight down. Now with Marte, it's a specific issue. He's on the IL because of migraines. He hit the shelf for a while, came back, and then after a couple of 0 for 4 performances, back to the injured list. Sure, you could just put him on your IL and that's it, wait for him to come back. It doesn't seem like he'll be back real soon, and the Mets at this point have absolutely no reason to bring him back. So we might not see him even until September. And then at that point, there's the fact that he hadn't really been having his best season anyways, and then the whole motivation thing. You've seen it before with these veteran clubs that all of a sudden have to become sellers and then they tank the rest of the way. I mean, I don't know what we can really hope for from Marte the rest of the way. It would be a hard sell, but look, at this point, I would say try, if your trade deadline hasn't passed yet, to sell them for whatever you can get. And I say that because this was tried on me not too long ago in one of my leagues, very competitive league. I was offered up 2 Mets, one of them being Starling Marte, in exchange for some young players. Not doing it, not biting at that bait. And then there's that other New York team. Carlos Rodon is, or was supposed to be, part of that rotation, but is no longer because he's also back on the IL. So here's my simple advice for him, without getting into all the details and logistics and even the stats, is just drop him. This was a bad draft pick, and this was not a guy worth stashing, because even when he came back, he wasn't last year's version of Rodon. Not lights out, obviously not right, now hurt again. Who knows what is going to be next? I mean, I don't see it going well, even if he comes off the IL soon-ish. I mean, honestly, you're not getting last versions of Rodon. You're getting the previous version where he was always hurt, always something. I don't want to deal with that at this point. Yeah, if I have room, fine, stash him and forget about him. But really, if I need the space, I'm going to just cut him and forget that it ever happened. Now, this one's not as clear cut. Talk about a pretty good player this year and somebody who has been good for fantasy. That's Alex Verdugo. What's going on with him? Well, he's been kind of a baby lately. He's whining about the fact he got snubbed for the All-Star team. He thinks he deserved that. And then he got benched by Alex Cora, disciplinary issues. So is there something big going on here? Is there something to worry about? And also the fact that, well, since that All-Star snub, according to him, he hasn't looked like the same hitter. He's been batting 200 with just 1 home run in the last month, up until his recent last couple of games where he's picked up at least a couple of hits. I'm not going to panic here because you know this is a guy who can hit for average. That's consistently what he does. The only thing we'd be waiting for with Verdugo is for the power to really tick up, and it hasn't quite done that yet. But he knows how to get hits. He scores a bunch of runs in that lineup. And since his benching, he has sort of responded. He's at least doing something. So maybe this will be a turning point for him. Maybe he just needed a wake-up call. You could look at this as a last-ditch buy low opportunity, although his season stats make it seem pretty unlikely anybody's going to sell him at this point. Not as clear what to do with the outfielder in Texas. That's Leody Taveras, who had been really hot in the first half and has really struggled, only hitting 191 since the All-Star break, and he's striking out at about a 30% clip. I mean, he has the profile you love. He's got a little bit of power, definitely has some speed, had been hitting for average and in a stacked Rangers lineup. Part of the issue is that Rangers lineup isn't quite as intimidating anymore with Josh Jung out with that broken thumb. Jonah Heim also has been on the IL, not set to come back just yet. And then now Taveras struggling for who knows what reason. I would just say possible regression because he had been playing a little bit over his head and now it's hit him hard. This is a player I say bench until he gets it right because we've seen this bad version of him before. Remember, he really struggled when he first came up to the majors. I mean, he was a complete afterthought until early this season when he was hitting well. So I'm going to say until he turns it around, definitely bench. He is droppable in 12-team or shallower leagues if you need the bench space or if you just look for somebody who can contribute right now. And then with one more young player here to talk about, it's always tricky to know with rookies what is going to happen. The ups and downs, yeah, that's normal. But Henry Davis is a player who is definitely a high-end prospect for the Pirates and had assumed an everyday position, usually in right field, even though he qualifies as catcher, came up as a catcher. The last 2 weeks alone, he's hitting 103 and he's just got 1 home run. That means he's batting just .221 on the season. Got 4 home runs, but that alone is not gonna do it for you. It's tempting to hold a guy who has his kind of upside and qualifies as catcher, but it looks like Major League pitching has kind of caught on to him, and without the potential of run scoring being at the top of the order, I'd say until he turns it around, I am going to move on, just drop him, you know, to the waiver wire, go with somebody else for the meantime. Keep an eye to see if he figures it out, but right now it seems like he still might be a year away from being a reliable producer. Hopefully that gave you some help on what to do with some of the players on your roster this coming week. Don't forget, if you're still looking for some smart waiver wire pickups, I got you covered here.